Muy buenas noches, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well, blessed, and enjoying family. As always, thank you, everyone, for everyone's words, wishes, prayers, and the love you guys extend and share with me. From the heart, I'm real humble and thankful. Also, do please help support the channel or the message by giving a like, dislike, leaving a comment, and do subscribe and share. Thank you. Well, everyone, first and foremost, I wasn't gonna record today because I know I'm already annoying enough, but well, you guys know I was gonna make a long trip, and it kicked my behind, and I don't know, it's if it's my heart or it's just a lymphoma. I don't know, but I can't really breathe, walk, I had to start chemo out here in the new spot tomorrow, but I doubt it's gonna happen, for multiple reasons, First and foremost, I don't have my ends to do so tomorrow, and I doubt like this they're gonna want to start, so we'll see. But anyways, I say this to apologize if I sound more slow than usual. I just want to get something out there, a message. I don't want it to stop. But anyways, today I want to talk about a pili that's not really well known, right? And it goes hand in hand with a question I asked, right? They have told me to touch on one of the craziest things I personally thought someone had done, right? And I want to touch on a few because it's hard to say just one, right? But due to recent things, I want to touch on this one, right? Which is the homie Downer from Rialto, IE, right? I'll take you back to when I got to Tehachapi. The homie was already there. He had came from Calipat. You know, I forgot on what, but I think he had done a movida on a CO, right, on a Huda, and he was back there in the Zapato, and he was sleepy soldado, right, from Wilmas. And once he got back there, if they really thought you were associated in any way, shape, or form with the Pili and Billiard, they would send you to 7 block, right? Anyways, when he landed there, of course, Toto was already in his town, so it was real easy for him to connect with Toto. Again, Toto was one of them firme vatos, right? Well, at least at this time. So eventually they would start working hand in hand, and Donner became closer when Turtle from Ontario got there. There's a couple Pilis from IE, either on layover or paroling, whatever, right? But his name circle, right? But this is like right when I went out there, right? When I got there, excuse me. And we started going out to the same concrete yard. By this time the homie was not validated, nor was I. It again, he was doing his thing with Toro, but I had to do more on the streets, right? Feria. And well, he was real famous for a few things that happened out there in this town, right? That they try to pin it to different angles, which I ain't nobody to correct the Federico, right? Let them think what they're gonna think. But if I recall correct, his thing on the streets happened in 97. So this is 2002, I believe. So he had been down. He was just on a fast one, right? Again, the homies from IE, they tend to push for it like that, right? To politic, to be sincere, right? From all areas, but well, anyways, that's not important. He was well, let me touch to what I thought, right? When we went out to committee, we seen classification. There was dog cages, right? On one side, right when you went in down the hall, down, and then usually on the other side, they would put debriefers, right? Them batos that were gonna go to Corcoran and start their little program on telling on everybody they cross paths with, right? So, anyways, there was one there, Spider from Upland. This cat had maybe a month that he had gave that little kite to the Judas and said, I fear for my life, I'm done with this, right? Don't get me. But that cat, he was one of them individuals, right? That he was well connected and you know, a lot of the things out there they try to pin Toro with, they said La Familia, right? But it's BS, right? At least Downer and them, there's things they were doing it with with a familia in Zacatecas. So I'll just leave it like that, right? Uh, if anybody knows Toro good, you know what I'm talking about, right? Nevertheless, Spider at one time he was supporting Toro, so before he called it quit, he pulled up an Enriquez, right? Which is for a while he knew he was going to do that, so he sat on Feria that didn't belong to him, right? That had to go to Toro and Creeper from Ontario when they were set up there. But homie thought, since I'm going out, I'm going to go out with a bang. The other thing, this vato, he was right there in C-section, right? And he went from being a low soldado to a straight chavala because he started woofing from the doors, right? From behind the doors. You see, this fool was in the game for a long time, right? Running places, running feria. We're talking about, oh, whoever knows Toro knows he moves feria. Period. As Sleepy, right? These were the two Billies working hand in hand at this time out there in that angle of Ahí, right? Rialto, Barstow, Upland, Fontana. Well, in that area, right? You know, he sat a feria. How much in that? Toro never disclosed it, right? But nevertheless, he clipped him, right? He clipped the M, period. So, there was a Huda there. No needs to say his name, but he was a Raza Huda there that he had a real liking to T, right? To Toro. And basically, he squared off things, right? To the point where we knew the day he was going to be out there in committee to get enrolled into that program, right? They had to change his classification chrono or whatever the hell they do to a that the custody, right, to go into that program. I don't know what they do. I'll be sincere. Nevertheless, again, they put him on the opposite side of the little hole. Committee's in the middle. We tend to be on this side, and they used to put him on that side, right? Kind of like a keep away type of thing. Anyways, the night before, you know, down there as T, they basically asked me if I could support, right? And at the time it's all I thought of, right? So of course I said dispuesto, que hay que hacer para merecer, right? So they basically told me, he was gonna do you could say a kamikaze mission, right? In committee, but he had to usually when you do something like that, they take you out that block. Usually they will move you all the way to A yard, or you go to A block and you get transferred to Corcoran or the Bay, right? It's just how they used to act. So he put groceries in his cajuela, right, to take for tea in case it happened. And basically I was supposed to help with a key and one of them pieces, right? But to take care of it, right? Because again, it's just little dog cages were sleeping next to each other, right? And again, there was a Huda real fun of tea, right? And he took out people from 7 block. I'll just leave it at that, right? Anyways, so I said, yeah. And I even told him, if you need help, I'll support, to at least, pin him down, I know every Hudas were going to be on us like hell, but, I took wrestling as a kid, so at least right away submit him, pin him, and have the homeboy go into town and take his win, right? Again, is where my mindset was at, right? Basically, I wanted to hit and make it count. But the homeboy say, nah, there's no need for that, You're assisting T here, aquí quédate. At the time, everything was it was smooth with T, right? There was no, well, as they started tripping later on, right? When this Huda moved. But anyways, I I really didn't see no point in him doing it in committee, right? For the reason that homeboy had a date, right? And yeah, his name was out there doing things and and ahí for the Pilis, but nevertheless he had a date, you know. But again, it's the mindset we have, you know, date, no date, a mission, right? Anyway, I'm not gonna make it long to you guys. Spider went into committee, and you know, everything went down. I handed him them things, and you know, accidentally his lock wasn't locked, and he ran out. Barefooted, he ran out. That little dog cage ran into committee. You know where they have the whole set there, and as he's sitting down, you know, they put a chair back facing committee, and you sit there. Homeboy jumped on him, I guess, and grabbed the chair and just started going to town on him, talking about going to town. There was so much kudos on him. It got to the point where that they tried to drag them both out of committee with the chair. Homeboy was locked into the chair going to town on this fool, right? And you know, unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know, he didn't hit his target the right way, right? I mean, he did. How many times? A lot, you know. I would literally see them fool, the seals with the batons on them, spraying him, and this fool one hand holding on his legs around the legs of the chair, and just see him going into it, right? But nevertheless, homeboy survived. You know, to our surprise, they took him to A block. But I think it's when there was this sergeant, right, that he thought he was a gang expert, so which in reality he knew a lot, right? Because like he probably had a lot of vatos that were playing that active part, but were talking to him on the DL, right? And he didn't move him either yards or nothing. He kept him at A block, waited to see if DA would pick it up, which they did, you know, and they brought him back to 7 block. And you know, once he was in 7 block, basically I was like, you should let me go. And he was like, nah, it's all good. But I thought they had broken him off, right? But anyways, that's not the main topic of the conversation, right? Of this. That's what this was into Achibishu. Within time, there was a big Rico, I guess, out there in his town. And in his town in, I don't know, Barstow, I don't know. There was a big Rico in it. Ham and Creeper, the Pili from Ontario that was Toro Selly, they got called in, you know. They started, they pulled him out. I never knew at this time, you know, how much time they had given, but he went to the feds, you know. And of course he went sold up with Toto, right? At the time it was gonna be a little different because he was gonna be in the feds, Toto in the state, right? But as you guys know, within time, Toto would end up being out there. And Homeboy picked up a lot, right? I'm talking about, what year was it? 17? 2017, you know, it's when I was with Sana and them. Just I heard his name again, right? And he was already a made member. He was a CARNAL that got made in the feds. And his stronghold, though, was in Georgia. You see a lot of people tell me how the state is different than the feds. You have a lot more reach. You have a lot of virgin territory out there, you know, where you could tap in and basically impose what we grew up with, right? Poison. And there was a couple camaradas from Georgia, you know, I believe from 18th Street and Tiny Locals. Some, anyways, in neighborhoods out there in Georgia, right? That were under and downer. By this time, he was a Pili and he was moving, he was moving candy, right? Again, they try to say, I read some paperwork he shared with me, right? That they try to say he was with a family and they were dead wrong. That's why you hear a lot of things, don't believe it, right? He was well known in with Jalisco and Zacatecas. No need to state names, right? But because he stayed faithful to Toto even when he got made. Nevertheless, basically, same thing happened, you know. He, Pajarito got in his ear to come support Mexico, right? And it's what happens in Mexico. If, for at least for him, right? If he has some type of power as he did, he had neighborhoods in Georgia answering to him, sending to him, moving his work, you know. He wasn't in that power struggle in Califas, right? That everybody's on everybody's throat. And anyways, he was doing his thing. He could have gotten out, went to Georgia and just wait to get caught again, because that's the program, right? Nevertheless, he came to Mexico to support, and he would eventually join the faction out here, right? In Mexico, but in Jalisco, under Sapo. He, well, he was one of Sapo's closest man, because again, Jalisco is different when it comes to camaradas and pilis, right? And nevertheless, even though Sapo, he's part of the causa and everything, he still has to answer up to a boss, right? And Tanner was crazy. When I physically seen this individual again, it was 21. Yeah, it was 21, 2021. We're we're headed out to Oaxaca, and anyways, we met up with D and a few other Pilis, Sapo, Rudy. We all met, of course, Mono, Richie, and O were there too, the little crew. Evil was busted, so. And in this meeting, the homie showed up with his number one soldado, right? And it was the homie from Barstow. I just know he was from Barstow, right? He had it across his neck. They called him Tank. He was literally that, right? But anyways, he showed up, and we were to go out to Cuernavaca and basically take care of something real fast. And then from there, we were going to split. We were supposed to, but again, I was headed for Oaxaca. He was heading to a different spot, right? A spot where, at least in Oaxaca, yeah, we had it bad with the group that was in charge of there in the MS, and then guys that didn't like Sureños from 18. But there was gonna be a big faction of Sinaloa coming with us. Where the homie was going, it was him and his crew, right? He had a crew of nothing but homies, and of course, again, his right hand man, Tank, he was a soldado, right? I'm telling you, because we went out there and well, I don't want to put the target on myself, but it was basically against government, right? For something that had happened with Bago. And I'll just leave it at that, right? Again, the homie, he was a savage. The Pili, he understood the rules of Mexico, which were just pointers, period. He wasn't like some other Pilis that were out here and they still just wanted to get high and wanted missions to be completed, take down doors to be open, pipelines, avenues, and them just chilling and getting high, right? He was really one of them, right? My respects. For example, that day, well, what he did in committee with a cuerno and someone, he did it, but different part of government. I know for those that know the homie, he was down, homie. Even though he made it all the way up, he was still humble in the sense, vámonos, let's boogie. Anyways, see guys, from there I went to a little rancho in Veracruz. I already mentioned it, but I will touch on it. The reason I'm touching on this, it's all of misled lie. I always say it, even when there's some firme pilis, cause Downer, I don't know if because we had history, but whenever I heard him address a camarada, he was different. The homie Tank, they had a lot of clecha, right? In the sense of respect. But nevertheless, they guided him wrong. For example, they knew how impulsive he was. Just like this told me, right? And just recently, what was it? 4 days, 5 days, they basically, he got too popular for his own good. I stated it before, right? And, I've spoken about the Spili, but the problem with Sapo is that, he abides by the rules of Mexico. And what I mean by this is Downer basically leaned on him, right? To keep Georgia going. And greed got in the way. And basically, I'm not gonna call Sapo an R cause a rata cause you guys make that call, right? Nevertheless, Downer was knocking heads. Wherever they send him, Valles, Zacatecas, Veracruz, whatever. If you were in the mix down in Mexico, you heard about him and Tiny, right? And his crew. And nevertheless, that's how government works down here, right? They basically told Sapo and, well, we just say Sapo, right? That to keep government happy, He had to turn someone in. And who do you guys think turned in? Who's gonna benefit for the Billy getting caught, right? Which I believe, I don't think he was sent him to get clipped, but anyways, when they tried to arrest the homie, he just wasn't going for it, right? He was a knucklehead. I heard Tank is the one that started, and Downer backed him up, and they got down. Like I said, I wish I would be able to share pictures with you guys on personal things out here, right? But I'll just say the homie and the Billy came out here to be faithful. That's what they got. And all for what? For Sapo to stay with the pipeline to Georgia. The clients, right? Whoever has the clients controls everything. That's the words they use out here. The worst part is he was still advising him, receiving advices from old man Dean, T, Mono, that way they were really from the area and they were all in it. They were gonna get a cut, right? As they were, but it was gonna benefit Jalisco. So they threw him down the pipe. And that's how it is, you see. Nothing you do will ever satisfy the gato. I understand Mexico are different rules and regulations, but again, I met the homie in the States. He was real smart in what he did, right? Tank, I didn't meet him until Mexico, so I couldn't tell you his backstory, right? But at least down there, you always heard that fool making money, opening avenues, and never was one of them greedy ones. But you see, that's what happens. You either fall into that tecato mentality and ways, or you're just dead weight as camaradas that basically say no. We're either a dancing monkey to do what we're asked, or we're throwaways. Anyways, I'm sorry if I sound all dumb, but basically I wanted to talk about this individual again. It's just recently I got an email, right, with some pictures, and they told me about the homie, and the Billy, and the back to it, and I once, I'm not gonna say, but I did at one point say, follow suit, but don't go that extra mile. Mexico's a trip. I thank God that I was always around it since kids, right? But again, it was a Billy. I was a homie, right? What can a homie tell a Billy? Nada. But anyways, you see, the main thing about this is you could do many sacrifices for the causa. Let's give everything up. As you see, homeboy did in Tehachapi and the feds. Because if the feds would have found out the pipelines he had, he would have gotten indicted again and he'd have been through. The homie was Chicano. He could have paroled and sat, right? Nevertheless, he lifted his hands to support Mexico to get turned in and gunned down. Again, you will never satisfy a Tecato. So don't give up on life, period, right? Again, I'm not on here to tell you go sideways in any way. Do your thing, but if you're able to make it to a certain etapa, then be smart, Be one of the ones that did your thing and will continue to do your thing. Don't waste your life. And remember, when you go to prison, you never go to prison alone. Guys, solo, right? That's the dicho. But you never fall alone. Your family's going to do the time with you. So stay true to yourself and loyal to your loved ones. Do excuse my breathing, everyone. I hope I make sense. Buenas noches.